Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, Ethan Fitzgerald, a self-made millionaire, thought his past with Clara was behind him until a call from her hospital bed changes everything. As old wounds reopen and unexpected truths emerge, Ethan must confront his mistakes and navigate the complexities of love, forgiveness, and second chances. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. Ethan Fitzgerald had always been a man of ambition, a self-made millionaire. He had built his fortune from the ground up, but it hadn't come without sacrifices. One of those sacrifices had been his marriage to Clara, a woman he had once loved. Deeply, their love had been intense, full of passion, but as time went on, it was clear that their ambitions and lives no longer aligned. After a difficult divorce, they parted ways, and Ethan moved forward with his career, leaving the past behind at least. That's what he thought. Years passed, and Ethan rarely thought about Clara. He had kept his distance, focusing on the whirlwind of his business ventures. But one morning his assistant called him with urgent news. Clara was in the hospital, and it was important that he come quickly. Ethan's first instinct was to ignore it, thinking perhaps it was a minor issue. But then his curiosity gnawed at him. What could have happened to Clara? He hadn't spoken to her in over 5 years. Reluctantly, he made his way to the hospital. As he entered the sterile, white-walled hallway, a sense of unease washed over him. He wasn't sure what he expected to find, but certainly not the sight that awaited him. Clara, his ex-wife, was lying in a hospital bed, looking fragile but a newborn baby bundled in her arms. Ethan stopped dead in his tracks, shocked. He hadn't known Clara was expecting, let alone had a child. His heart raced, a mixture of confusion and disbelief bubbling up inside him. He hadn't seen her for so long, and he'd never imagined she would have started a family without telling him. Clara smiled weakly when she noticed Ethan standing there, her eyes soft with emotion. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice strained but warm. "I wasn't sure if you'd come." The sight of Clara, so different from the woman he once knew, strong, independent, but now fragile and vulnerable, stirred something in him that he had long buried. He stepped forward cautiously, still processing the sight of the child in her arms. "Clara, I didn't know. I had no idea you were pregnant," Ethan said, his voice betraying his confusion. "Is everything okay?" Clara's eyes welled with tears, but she blinked them away. "It's a lot to explain, Ethan, but yes, everything is fine now." The baby stirred in her arms, and Clara gently rocked the little one back to sleep. Ethan watched in silence, unable to take his eyes off the tiny life she was holding. "Truth is," Clara began slowly, "I didn't know how to tell you. After we divorced, I wasn't sure how to bring this into the world. It wasn't part of the plan, and I didn't want to complicate your life." She paused, looking at Ethan with a sense of regret. "I wanted to protect you from this." Ethan's mind swirled as he tried to comprehend what he was hearing. "Clara, I would have wanted to know," he said, his voice softening. "You didn't have to keep this from me." Clara nodded, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I know, but at the time, I thought it was the right thing. I didn't want to tie you to something you didn't choose." Ethan took a deep breath, the emotions welling up inside him. He walked closer to the bed, his gaze moving from Clara's face to the baby in her arms. His heart softened as he looked at the little one, the baby's innocent face completely unaware of the complicated past that had led to this moment. "What's her name?" Ethan asked, his voice breaking the silence. "Her name is Lily," Clara replied, her voice full of love as she looked down at the newborn. Ethan felt a rush of emotions: love, guilt, compassion flowed through him. For a moment he didn't see the woman he had divorced or the life they once had. All he could see was the child in Clara's arms, the innocent life that had been brought into the world, despite all the past struggles. "Clara, Ethan started, struggling to find the right words. "I can't believe I didn't know. But I want to be here, for you, for her. I want to be part of her life." Clara's eyes widened in surprise. She had never expected Ethan to say that. She had always seen him as someone so focused on his career, someone who had closed off his heart to everything else. Yet here he was, offering kindness and compassion when she had expected nothing more than indifference. "You're sure?" Clara asked, her voice tinged with vulnerability. Ethan nodded. "I'm sure. I know I've made mistakes in the past, but I'm not going to let this little girl grow up without knowing her father. I don't want to make the same mistakes again." Clara smiled softly, tears falling from her eyes. "I've been so scared, Ethan, scared of doing it alone, scared of not being enough for Lily." Ethan sat down beside her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone, Clara. I'm here now, and I'll be here for her, I promise." The room fell into a peaceful silence, the only sound the soft breathing of the newborn. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something inside him shift, a deeper sense of connection, not just to Clara, but to this new life that had unexpectedly entered his world. In that moment, he realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures or material wealth. It was about being there for someone when they needed you the most. It was about offering kindness and compassion, even when it seemed difficult or inconvenient. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept his promise. He visited Clara and Lily often, helping with the newborn and offering emotional support to Clara. The bond between the three of them grew stronger with each passing day. Ethan found joy in being a father figure to Lily, a role he never imagined he'd take on at this point in his life. And Clara, though hesitant at first, began to see a new side of Ethan, a side that was gentle, loving, and full of heart. Their relationship slowly transformed, not into something romantic, but into a friendship rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and a shared love for Lily. Ethan became an active part of Lily's life, attending her first birthday, helping Clara with daycare costs, and even taking her on trips to the park. It wasn't perfect, and there were moments of tension, but there was a deep sense of love and compassion that bound them together. Ethan had learned that sometimes the greatest gifts in life came when you least expected them. His wealth and success meant little compared to the joy he found in being there for his ex-wife and their child. And as he looked at Lily, he knew that no amount of money could ever replace the warmth he felt in his heart, knowing that he had been given a second chance to be a part of a family, to offer love, kindness, and compassion when it mattered most. As the months passed, Ethan's role in Lily's life became more than just that of an occasional visitor. Clara and he developed a new, unexpected dynamic. Their communication became more open, honest, and grounded in shared experiences as parents. They began to co-parent Lily with a level of mutual respect neither of them had anticipated. Ethan had always been someone who thrived on structure and control in the business world, but when it came to parenting, he had to learn patience. It wasn't about making everything perfect, it was about being present and understanding the needs of the people around him. Clara too had adjusted to this new reality. While she had been hesitant at first, seeing Ethan step up to the plate gave her a sense of relief. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like she was shouldering the weight of the world alone. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, the house quiet except for the sound of Lily's soft giggles from the other room, Clara looked over at Ethan. There was a calmness in her expression, a gentleness that hadn't been there before. "I never thought we'd be here again," she said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. Ethan smiled, the warmth of her words striking a chord deep within him. "Neither did I, but I'm glad we are." Clara nodded and glanced at the pictures on the walls, many of which were from their life before the divorce. There was one in particular, an old photo of them at a picnic in the park, laughing and carefree. It seemed like a lifetime ago. "Do you ever miss what we had?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan paused for a moment, considering her question. I think I miss the idea of it, the innocence of our love back then, but that's not who we are anymore, is it? We've both changed, and that's okay. What matters now is that we've found a way to make this work for Lily." Clara smiled at him, grateful for his honesty. She had never expected Ethan to be so open about their past, but in the quiet of that evening she realized how far they had come, not as a couple, but as people who had grown, who had learned from their mistakes. They weren't perfect, but they were doing their best, and that was all that mattered. The weeks turned into months. Ethan took on more responsibilities. He wasn't just the rich ex-husband anymore. He became a steady presence in Lily's life. He attended parent-teacher meetings, took her to the zoo, and spent quiet afternoons reading books with her. Even Clara, who had been so used to doing everything on her own, began to see a shift in their relationship. Ethan wasn't just helping because he felt obligated, he was genuinely invested in being a part of Lily's life, and that made all the difference. One Sunday afternoon, as they sat in the park watching Lily chase after a butterfly, Clara turned to Ethan with a soft, almost amused smile. "You've come a long way, haven't you?" Ethan chuckled, brushing a hand through his hair. "I guess I have. It's not what I expected, but it's been one of the best things that's ever happened to me." Clara looked at him, her eyes reflecting the same realization. "I never thought I'd see the day when we'd be here, together, doing this, as friends, for her." "It's funny," Ethan said, his tone reflective. "I used to think that having everything was what mattered. The money, the success, the big house. But being here with you, helping raise Lily, That's real success. Clara's heart swelled. With emotion, she hadn't known how much she needed to hear those words until now. She had always felt like she was doing everything alone, but in this quiet, simple moment, she realized that she wasn't. They had both come to understand something much deeper than the surface-level tension and pain of their past. Love, kindness, and compassion weren't just abstract ideals. They were actions that could change lives. Ethan continued to be a steady, reliable force in Lily's life, and as the years passed, their relationship only deepened. Though they would never return to the romantic love they once shared, they found something even more powerful: friendship, respect, and a shared commitment to raising Lily together. When Lily turned 5, they celebrated her birthday in the park with balloons, cake, and laughter. The day was full of joy, but it was also a celebration of something much deeper: the bond that had been formed between two people who had once been on the verge of completely losing touch with each other. They had built something from the ashes of their past, something stronger and more meaningful than either of them had expected. As the sun set on that day, Ethan and Clara stood side by side, watching Lily play with the other children. Ethan looked at Clara, his eyes full of appreciation. "I never thought I could feel this way about you again," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "God," Clara smiled softly, her heart full. "Neither did I, but sometimes life gives us second chances, and it's up to us to make the most of them." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. The past had been messy, full of mistakes and misunderstandings, but now, they were building something new together. They weren't perfect, but they were working towards something real, something that mattered: love, kindness, and compassion for themselves, for Lily, and for the family they had created. Against all odds, as they stood there, side by side, they both knew that no matter what the future held, they had found something far more valuable than wealth or success. They had found each other again, in a way they never expected, and for that they would always be grateful. As the years rolled on, Ethan and Clara continued to navigate their shared responsibilities as co-parents. The initial awkwardness of their new dynamic slowly faded into a comfortable rhythm. They spent holidays together, taking turns organizing family gatherings, and often found themselves discussing Lily's future, her education, and how they could make sure she grew up surrounded by love and support. They weren't just co-parents, they had become partners in the truest sense, with an unspoken understanding of each other's needs, strengths, and weaknesses. One evening, when Lily was 8, Ethan was sitting on the porch of Clara's house, sipping a cup of coffee, as the sun set behind the trees. He had just dropped off some supplies for Lily's school project, a task that had become second nature to him. He had long since stopped thinking of it as an obligation. In fact, he loved these little moments, checking in on Lily's homework, discussing what she had learned in school, or just playing catch with her in the yard. It was in these moments that he felt truly alive, truly fulfilled. Clara came out onto the porch, her face illuminated by the fading light. She stood for a moment, taking in the peaceful scene of her daughter playing with her friends. Then, she turned to Ethan, her expression softening. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if we hadn't divorced?" she asked, her voice low, almost hesitant. Ethan looked up from his coffee, meeting her gaze. For a moment, he didn't know how to respond. It was a loaded question, one that carried with it years of memories, good and bad, but as he thought about it, he realized something profound. "Sometimes," he said, setting his cup down on the porch railing, "but I think that if we hadn't gone through what we did, we wouldn't be where we are now. I wouldn't have this feeling of peace. I wouldn't know what it means to be truly present for Lily, and I wouldn't know how to appreciate what I have. We had to go through everything to get to this point." Clara smiled gently, her eyes misting over. "I agree. We've both come a long way, and I think we're better for it." Ethan's heart swelled. It wasn't often that they had conversations like this, but in those rare moments he realized just how much they had healed, not just for themselves, but for Lily. They had both grown as people, and in doing so they had given their daughter a stable, loving environment to flourish in. As the days turned into years, Ethan's bond with Lily deepened even further. He attended every school play, every recital, every parent-teacher meeting. He cheered her on at her soccer games and spent quiet nights with her, teaching her how to play chess and helping with her math homework. Clara, for her part, appreciated how much Ethan had become involved. She had once feared that her decision to have a child on her own would drive a wedge between her and Ethan, but instead it had brought them closer in ways she hadn't imagined. Wasn't just about the big moments, it was the little things that made their co-parenting work. Ethan would drop by unexpectedly to help Clara with home repairs or to bring dinner on busy nights. Clara would text him updates about Lily's day, letting him know when she had a tough time at school or when she was particularly excited about a new project. There was an ease between them now, a deep respect and understanding that hadn't been there during their marriage, but had grown steadily over the years. One afternoon, when Lily was 13, she came to Ethan with a problem that made his heart ache. She had a school dance coming up, and she was nervous about asking someone to go with her. Ethan, who had never been one to offer relationship advice, found himself at a loss for words. He had always been a protector, a provider, but now, he had to be something else, someone who could offer his daughter the emotional support she needed. He sat with her on the couch, putting a hand on her shoulder. "Lily, you're amazing, just as you are. And if you want to ask someone to the dance, do it because you want to, not because you think you have to. The right people will appreciate you for who you are." Lily smiled, a little unsure but comforted by her father's words. "Thanks, Dad, I'll think about it." That night, after Lily went to bed, Ethan found himself reflecting on how far he had come. He had gone from being a businessman obsessed with success to a father who valued moments like these, real, unfiltered moments of connection. He had found something more meaningful than the endless chase for wealth. He had found the kind of love that was patient, kind, and, most importantly, unconditional. A few months later, Lily did go to the dance, and Ethan found out she had gone with a group of friends, all having fun without any pressure. When she returned home that evening, her face lit up with joy as she told her parents all about the night. Clara smiled at Ethan, and their eyes met, sharing a quiet understanding. They had done it. They had raised a daughter who was confident, kind, and able to navigate the world with grace, despite everything they had been through. But as Lily grew older, the bond between Ethan and Clara remained strong. Even though the roles had shifted, they continued to support each other through challenges, whether it was helping Lily navigate high school or dealing with personal struggles. Though their romantic love had faded long ago, the friendship that blossomed in its place was a testament to the power of healing and the beauty of second chances. One evening, as they sat together, watching Lily play with the family dog in the yard, Clara turned to Ethan, her face peaceful. "Do you think we did a good job?" Ethan looked at her, his heart full. "I think we did better than we ever could have imagined, and we still have time to make it even better." Clara smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad you're here, Ethan. I don't think I could have done this without you." Ethan wrapped his arm around her, a gesture of comfort and support that was now so natural. He didn't need anything more than this moment, this life they had built together, for Lily, and for themselves. They had both learned that love wasn't always about passion or perfection. Sometimes, it was about doing the hard work, of caring for someone, forgiving the past, and building something beautiful in the present. And for Ethan, standing there with Clara, watching their daughter grow into an incredible young woman, he knew that in the end, this was the greatest success of all. The wealth he had once thought was so important paled in comparison to the love and family he now had, something worth far more than any amount of money. That as the years passed, a quiet but undeniable change occurred between Ethan and Clara. Love they once shared, the passionate, fiery connection that had brought them together in their youth, had never truly disappeared. It had simply been buried beneath the weight of their past mistakes, their divorce, and the complicated years that followed. But something about watching Lily grow up, seeing how much they had both transformed as individuals and parents, rekindled the spark of their former closeness. One late evening, when Lily was staying over at a friend's house for a sleepover, Ethan and Clara found themselves alone in the living room, the soft glow of the fireplace casting a warm light over the room. The house was quiet, save for the crackling of the fire. Ethan, who had grown accustomed to these moments of stillness, couldn't help but notice how Clara's presence had become a comfort to him in a way he hadn't expected. She had always been beautiful, more so now, in a way that was both timeless and radiant. Clara, too, noticed how the years had shaped Ethan. The intense businessman persona he had once worn so proudly had softened, and he seemed more at peace than ever before. But there was still that spark, the same passion that had drawn her to him when they were young. She found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't experienced in years. It was as if, through all their struggles, they had finally come full circle. As Ethan glanced over at her, he found himself captivated by her, the way she smiled so softly, the way her eyes gleamed with wisdom and understanding. Without thinking, he stood up and moved toward her, his heart racing as he closed the distance between them. Clara looked up at him, sensing the sudden shift in the air. There was a magnetic pull between them, something that had always been there, but now it felt different, more profound. "I've been thinking," Ethan said, his voice low and filled with emotion, about us, about everything we've been through. Clara met his gaze, her heart fluttering in her chest. She knew exactly where this was going. It had been years since they had let themselves feel this kind of closeness, this kind of connection. And yet, in this moment, it felt as if the walls they had built around their hearts were finally starting to crumble. "I know," she whispered. "I've been thinking about it, too." Without another word, Ethan reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, his touch tender and warm. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she gazed up at him, the weight of the past and the present merging in an overwhelming surge of emotion. She had loved him once with all her heart, but she had thought that love was lost to time. Yet now, standing here with him, she realized it had never truly faded. It had only been waiting, quietly, for the right moment to ignite once more. Moment their lips met was like a spark in dry grass, a rush of heat and passion that sent a shiver through both of them. It was as if all the years of pain, regret, and longing were suddenly swept away, replaced by an all-encompassing, undeniable love. Ethan kissed her deeply, with a fervor he hadn't realized he still possessed. Clara responded with equal passion, her hands running up his chest to pull him closer, as if she couldn't get enough of the feeling of being in his arms again. They pulled back for a moment, both breathing heavily, their foreheads touching. The world around them seemed to fade away. There was no business, no past mistakes, only the two of them, standing together in the quiet intensity of the moment. "I never stopped loving you," Ethan confessed, his voice hoarse with emotion. Clara closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I never stopped, either." In that moment, they knew that despite everything that had happened between them, despite the hurt, the distance, the years apart, they had found each other again. And this time, it was different. It wasn't just about passion. It was about forgiveness, healing, and the quiet realization that the love they had shared had only grown deeper with time. They made love that night, a tender, passionate union. That was more than just physical. It was an expression of all the emotions they had held inside for so long. It was a culmination of everything they had been through, a beautiful reminder that love could survive even the hardest trials. It was an acknowledgement of the journey they had taken, individually and together, to find their way back to each other. As dawn broke the next morning, the soft light filled the room, and they lay together in each other's arms, wrapped in the warmth of their shared love. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from Clara's face, his fingers lingering on her skin. She smiled up at him, her heart full. "I never thought we'd be here," she whispered, her voice soft, content. Ethan kissed her forehead gently. "Neither did I, but sometimes, life gives us exactly what we need when we least expect it." From that moment forward, everything changed between them. They were no longer just co-parents or ex-spouses who had come together out of necessity. They were partners in every sense of the word, bound not just by the responsibility of raising Lily, but by the passionate love they had rediscovered. Their bond deepened in a way neither of them could have predicted. They took time for themselves, finding new ways to connect beyond the responsibilities of parenthood. They traveled together, rediscovered old hobbies, and learned to communicate in ways they had never done before. Ethan, once consumed by work, now made time for Clara and Lily in a way that felt completely natural. He no longer felt the need to measure success by the size of his bank account. He measured it by the love and happiness in his home. Clara, too, found a new sense of purpose in this renewed relationship. She had always been strong, but now she had someone to share her life with, a partner who supported her, loved her unconditionally, and stood by her through every challenge. The passion between them was no longer fleeting. It was the foundation of a relationship that had been forged through years of trial and transformation. As they watched Lily graduate high school together, hand in hand, Ethan and Clara exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of how far they had come. Their love had survived the storms of the past, and now, it was stronger than ever. They had built something beautiful, not just for themselves, but for their daughter. And in that moment, as they stood together, watching their daughter step into the world as a young adult, they both knew one thing for sure: love, kindness, and passion were not just fleeting moments. They were the very things that had carried them through the hardest times and had brought them back together, stronger than ever. Their journey had been long, but it had been worth it. Because in the end, love wasn't just about finding each other, it was about growing together, forgiving each other, and embracing the passion and connection that only true love can bring. As the months passed, Ethan and Clara's newfound bond grew stronger, and their passion for each other continued to bloom. They had found peace in each other, a tranquility that had been missing from their lives for so long. It wasn't just about their deep love for one another, it was about mutual respect, shared experiences, and an unspoken understanding that neither of them had ever fully appreciated before. Their relationship felt like a second chance at something beautiful, and they both embraced it wholeheartedly. But as life sometimes does, it threw a curveball. It all started on a quiet evening. Clara had gone out with a friend for a girls' night, leaving Ethan to spend time with Lily. It had become a familiar routine. Ethan would handle the evenings with Lily, talking about her day, helping her with homework, and giving Clara a much-needed break. But that night, something felt different. As Ethan sat in the living room, he noticed Clara's phone buzzing on the coffee table. She had forgotten it when she left. Curiosity gnawed at him, and without thinking too much about it, he picked up the phone to silence it. That's when he noticed the name on the screen, Troy, Clara's old colleague. Ethan paused for a moment, the familiar tug of jealousy stirring in his chest, but he quickly dismissed it. After all, Clara and Troy had worked together years ago, long before their divorce. Surely it was just a friendly message, nothing more. But as he swiped the screen to silence it, something caught his eye. A series of texts from Troy that spanned the last few weeks. The messages were innocent enough at first, casual and friendly, but then, something shifted. The tone became more personal, and one message in particular stood out to Ethan, leaving him frozen. I can't stop thinking about you. I miss the way we used to be. Do you ever think about us? Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He set the phone down, feeling a cold sweat break out across his forehead. He knew Clara was close with Troy, but this felt different. This didn't feel like just a friendly exchange, it felt like something more, something deeper. The implications of those words hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. He told himself to wait until Clara got home to talk about it, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. What if there was something more between them? What if Clara had kept it from him? They had been through so much to rebuild their relationship, and now, the possibility of her returning to someone from her past felt like the ground beneath him was slipping away. When Clara returned home that evening, the tension between them was palpable. Ethan tried to act normal, but every part of him was on edge. He waited for the right moment, his mind racing, as Lily went upstairs to her room. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Clara sat down beside him, smiling as she always did, but this time it felt forced, like she was trying too hard to be the woman he knew. Ethan couldn't hold it in any longer. Her face shifted slightly, her brow furrowing. What's wrong? She asked, a hint of concern in her voice. Ethan looked her in the eye, his gaze unwavering. I saw the messages between you and Troy on your phone, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, as if the words alone would shatter everything. Clara went pale, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Finally, Clara let out a slow breath and looked at him with wide eyes. Ethan, it's not what you think. I don't know what to think anymore, Ethan replied, his voice tight. What's going on, Clara? Are you seeing him again? Clara's eyes filled with tears as she took his hand, squeezing it gently. No, Ethan, I swear, I'm not seeing him again. I would never. Her voice caught in her throat. I've been talking to him because I wanted closure. Ethan stared at her, trying to process the words. Closure. Clara nodded, her face a mix of regret and vulnerability. Troy and I were once so close, and before we divorced, we'd had plans, dreams of what our life could be, but then we went our separate ways. I never got the chance to properly say goodbye, and it's been haunting me. I needed to understand why we didn't work out, why we ended so abruptly. Ethan's heart softened a little, but the doubt still lingered. But why didn't you tell me about this? Why keep it a secret? Clara swallowed hard. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to complicate things between us. But when I saw you with Lily, when I saw how much we've all changed, I thought maybe it was time to face the past. But nothing, Ethan, nothing has changed between Troy and me, I promise. Ethan looked into her eyes, searching for the truth. He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. But the sting of betrayal still clung to his chest. He had fought so hard to get back to this place with her, to rebuild what they once had. The thought of losing it all because of an old flame was almost unbearable. But as Clara continued to hold his hand, her face soft with sincerity, something inside Ethan shifted. He had always prided himself on being able to trust his instincts, and now, in this moment, his instinct told him that Clara was being truthful. She wasn't hiding something from him. She was seeking closure, not reconciliation with her past. I don't know if I can just forget about this, Ethan admitted, his voice strained. It hurts, Clara. I didn't think we were still dealing with ghosts from the past. Clara nodded slowly, understanding the weight of his words. I know, and I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. But I need you to trust me, Ethan. I need you to believe that we've moved forward together. Ethan took a deep breath, the words cutting through his chest like a blade. It was hard, so hard to let go of the insecurity, but he knew that if he truly wanted to move forward with Clara, he had to let go of his doubts. And then, as the words of his own heart began to settle, he realized the true depth of what they had built: trust, compassion, and a love that was still blossoming despite the twists and turns. The past may have haunted them, but their love had become more than just surviving it, had become a testament to the resilience of the human heart. I trust you, Ethan finally said, his voice soft, yet firm, but I need time to process everything. I want to move forward, but I need to know that the past is truly behind us. Clara nodded, relief washing over her. I understand. Take all the time you need. As they sat there, in the dim light of the living room, a weight was lifted. They didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in years, they had each other, and that, in itself, was more than enough to keep going. The plot twist wasn't just about Troy, it was about the fragility and complexity of love itself. The realization that love is not only about passion, but also about trust, closure, and the willingness to let go of the past in order to embrace a brighter, more honest future. The days following their conversation were filled with tension, but also a quiet, unspoken sense of resolution. Ethan and Clara both needed time to process everything, but they were committed to working through it. They had made it through so much already, and this felt like another chapter in their journey, one that would test their relationship but also deepen their bond. Ethan threw himself into his work, trying to distract himself from the lingering unease in his chest. But when he came home in the evenings, his thoughts always seemed to return to Clara. He could see the genuine remorse in her eyes whenever they spoke, yet there was a part of him that still couldn't shake the doubt that lingered like a shadow. But time, as it often does, began to heal the wounds. Slowly, Clara became more transparent with him, sharing every detail about her interactions with Troy. She had even shown him some of their earlier messages, explaining the context behind them. The conversations that had once seemed so innocent now felt like pieces of a puzzle that had long since been completed. Clara was open, vulnerable, and honest with him in a way that only deepened his trust in her. Yet, despite their best efforts, there were still moments of doubt that crept into Ethan's mind, especially on the nights when Clara went out with friends or when she spent time alone. It was hard to suppress the fears that had been planted during those early days of uncertainty. But every time they came together, whether it was a quiet evening at home, an intimate dinner, or just a walk in the park with Lily, Ethan felt that spark again, the connection that had always been there. One afternoon, as the spring air began to turn warmer, Ethan decided to do something spontaneous. He called Clara while she was out grocery shopping and told her to meet him at their old favorite cafe, the one where they used to go when they were first dating. He had planned to surprise her with something special, a gesture to show her that he was ready to let go of the past and embrace the future with her. Clara agreed, a hint of excitement in her voice. When she arrived, Ethan was already seated at a table by the window, a single red rose on the table. He looked up at her as she walked in, her eyes bright and filled with curiosity. "You look beautiful," Ethan said, his voice full of warmth. Clara smiled, feeling a flutter of emotions. After everything they had been through, it felt so good to see Ethan like this, to see him genuinely happy, truly present. He had always been the one to take control of situations, but today, it was clear that he was giving himself fully to their relationship. Clara sat down across from him, and Ethan reached for her hand. "Clara, I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through, and I want to be clear. I'm ready to move forward." Clara's heart skipped a beat. Ethan held up a hand, his expression earnest. "No, let me finish. I know it hasn't been easy, and there are still things we need to work through, but I believe in us, and I want to give us a chance to rebuild, to truly rebuild, not just for Lily, but for us, for the love we've always had, and for the future we can create together." Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she listened to him, her heart swelling with gratitude and love. After everything, after all the pain and misunderstandings, Ethan was choosing her, choosing their future together. "I've always believed in us, Ethan. I just didn't know if we'd ever get here," Clara said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm not going anywhere." Ethan squeezed her hand, a sense of peace washing over him. The tension he had been holding on to for so long seemed to dissipate in that moment. There was no more doubt, there was only clarity. They had both made mistakes, but they had also learned, grown, and found a way to love each other again. That as they sat there, their hands entwined, a sense of profound connection passed between them. Ethan realized that the past didn't have to define them. They didn't need to keep looking back at their mistakes or at what had gone wrong. What mattered was the present, and the love they had rediscovered was worth every sacrifice. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of renewal. Clara and Ethan went on small weekend trips together, visited their favorite spots around town, and spent countless hours talking about their future. They started planning their life with a new sense of purpose, one where they would grow not just as parents, but as individuals who could fully trust each other again. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, fate intervened once more. Evening, as Clara was cleaning up after dinner, she received a phone call that made her freeze in place. It was from Troy. He had been trying to reach her for weeks, and now he was finally calling. Her heart raced as she glanced over at Ethan, who was in the other room with Lily. Without thinking, she answered the phone, her voice steady but tinged with a trace of nervousness. "Troy," she said softly. "What's going on?" "I've been thinking about you," Troy said, his voice low and earnest. "I know I shouldn't have come back into your life the way I did, but I'm not asking for anything. I just need to say this. I've never stopped loving you, Clara." Clara's heart sank. She had thought this chapter was closed, but hearing his voice again brought back memories she wasn't sure she was ready to revisit. "I'm in a new place in my life now, Troy," Clara said, trying to keep her voice even. "I've moved." And Troy didn't seem convinced. "Clara, I can't move on. I never truly let you go. I know I'm asking for a lot, but I need you to understand that I want a future with you." Clara closed her eyes, the weight of his words sinking in. She had thought she had left this part of her life behind. She had thought she had moved on, but now she was being faced with the reality of an unresolved piece of her past. And the more she listened to Troy, the more confused she became. Had she made the right choice with Ethan? Was there still a place for Troy in her heart? She took a deep breath and ended the call, her hands shaking. She couldn't let herself get lost in this again, but deep down, she knew she had to confront this once and for all. If she truly wanted to build a future with Ethan, she had to fully let go of the past. As she walked into the living room, Ethan looked up from his book. He could see something was different. Something had shifted in her. The weight in the room was palpable. Clara sat down next to him, her eyes brimming with uncertainty. "Troy called," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's heart stopped for a beat. "What did he say?" Clara looked at him, her face full of regret. "He still wants me, Ethan. He says he's never stopped loving me. And I don't know what to do." Ethan's mind raced. The feelings of doubt and jealousy he had fought so hard to suppress were rising to the surface again. He could feel the tension building inside him, but this time, he refused to let it control him. Instead, he turned to Clara, his expression filled with resolve. "We'll figure this out, Clara. I won't let you go. I've come this far, and I believe in us. In you, you need to decide what you want, but I won't walk away." Clara nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't want to hurt you, Ethan, but I'm so scared that I'm still holding on to something that isn't real." Ethan wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "Then let's figure it out together. We've always been able to rebuild, and we can do it again. But I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, Clara realized that the love she had for Ethan wasn't just about the past, it was about their future, about trust, and about choosing to let go of what no longer served them. The plot twist wasn't just about Troy, it was about her own growth. The courage to embrace the life she wanted, and to give herself completely to the future with the man she knew in her heart she was meant to be with. And so, as the weeks passed, Clara and Ethan worked through the final remnants of their past, their love deepening with every conversation, every embrace, and every moment of honesty. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't always smooth, but they were building something real, something lasting. Together. As the days passed, Ethan and Clara seemed to grow even closer. They both worked hard to rebuild their relationship, focusing on trust, vulnerability, and communication. It was slow, but it was happening. They were learning to embrace their new reality, knowing that the past was a foundation they could build upon, but not one that would define them. But then, just as life seemed to be falling back into place, the unthinkable happened. That it was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Clara received an email that would turn their world upside down. She had been sitting in the living room with Lily, reading through a book as she watched her daughter play. Ethan was at the office, handling some business matters, when the email arrived. At first, Clara thought nothing of it. She glanced at the subject line, "Important, your legal rights." It looked like another notification from the lawyer about some paperwork she had been handling for the house, but when she opened it, the message sent a chill down her spine. Dear Clara, we regret to inform you that your divorce settlement with Ethan Fitzgerald has been officially reopened. A new piece of evidence has come to light. You will need to attend a hearing on the matter. Please contact our office immediately. For further details. Best regards, the law office of Colton and Green. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the email, her mind racing. What new piece of evidence? Why hadn't she heard anything about this before? It had been years since the divorce, and she thought everything was settled. But clearly, something was amiss. She picked up the phone and dialed Ethan's office, her hand shaking as she pressed the phone to her ear. The line clicked, and Ethan's voice came through, calm as always. Hey Clara, how's everything going? Need you to come home. Now, Clara said, her voice trembling. There's something you need to see. Ethan's tone shifted immediately, sensing the urgency in her voice. What's going on? What happened? I don't know yet, but something's not right. I just got an email from the lawyer's office. They're reopening the settlement. They said there's new evidence. Ethan's heart dropped. He had thought after all these years that they were finally free from the ghosts of their past. But now the past was threatening to resurface, and it felt like everything was hanging in the balance. I'll be home in 20 minutes, he said quickly, trying to steady his own breathing. Stay calm. We'll figure this out together. When Ethan arrived home, Clara was pacing the living room, her eyes wide with anxiety. He rushed to her side, trying to comfort her, but his own sense of unease was growing. Clara, what does the email say? He asked, his voice tight. Clara showed him the message, and as he read it, a sense of dread settled in the pit of his stomach. New evidence, what could it be? It has to be a mistake, Ethan said, though he didn't believe it. There was a sense of finality in the letter, an unsettling certainty that made him question everything. We were done with this, Clara. This should be behind us. I don't know, Ethan, Clara replied, her voice cracking. I don't understand. I don't want to go through all of this again. Ethan held her, trying to reassure her, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. They both knew that the past had a way of sneaking back in when you least expected it, but they never could have anticipated this. The following morning they went to the law office, their nerves frayed, unsure of what to expect. The office was sterile and cold, its high-rise windows offering a view of the city skyline. They were shown into a small conference room, where a lawyer they had never met before greeted them with a look of grave professionalism. Mr. Fitzgerald, Mrs. Fitzgerald, the lawyer began, his voice somber. Thank you for coming in. No, this is a difficult situation, but I must inform you that we've uncovered a serious matter related to your previous divorce proceedings. Ethan's chest tightened, and Clara's hand trembled as she gripped his. What's going on? Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The lawyer cleared his throat. We've recently discovered evidence that was withheld during your divorce settlement. It pertains to financial discrepancies, large sums of money that were never accounted for in the final agreement. Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. What are you talking about? We both signed the settlement. It was final. I understand this is difficult to hear, but it appears that Ethan's financial records were altered during the divorce. The lawyer continued, looking directly at Ethan. Several bank transactions were concealed, and the court documents indicate significant assets that were never disclosed. Ethan felt the world spin around him. No, that's not possible. I would never. His voice faltered as the weight of the accusations settled in. Clara's face went pale, her eyes shifting between the lawyer and Ethan. What are you saying? That he lied to me? To the court? The lawyer nodded, his expression unwavering. It seems there was an attempt to conceal assets. We are currently investigating the extent of the fraud. We have a hearing scheduled in 2 weeks to review the evidence and determine next steps. This could have serious consequences. Clara turned to Ethan, her face a mix of confusion, anger, and hurt. Ethan, is this true? Ethan's mind was racing. He had worked so hard to build their life back, to earn Clara's trust again. But now, with these accusations hanging over him, everything felt like it was unraveling. He had never intentionally hidden anything from Clara, but the evidence was damning. I don't know, he stammered, his voice low. I don't understand what's happening. I've never done anything illegal. I've always tried to be honest with you. Clara took a step back, her eyes filled with uncertainty. Then why is this happening? Ethan, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't we know about any of this? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his chest tight. I swear, Clara, I didn't do this. I didn't hide anything from you. But now, I'm scared. scared that something I didn't know about is coming to light. The lawyer cleared his throat, interrupting the tense silence. I understand this is difficult, but I urge you both to prepare for the hearing. There may be more revelations to come. We'll be in touch. As they left the lawyer's office, the weight of the revelation sank in. Ethan couldn't look at Clara without seeing the doubt in her eyes. She had trusted him, and now, it felt like that trust was crumbling, piece by piece. I never wanted this, Ethan whispered, his voice broken. I never wanted to hurt you again, Clara. Clara, her voice trembling, replied, I don't know if I can go through this again, Ethan. I need to understand the truth. If this is true, I don't know what it means for us anymore. In that moment, everything seemed to hang in the balance. The love they had worked so hard to rebuild was now threatened by something neither of them could control. The plot twist wasn't just about an old relationship or a lost opportunity. It was about trust, betrayal, and the painful realization that the past might still have the power to destroy them. The hearing loomed ahead, and Clara and Ethan had to face the harsh reality that their future together might depend on the truth that was still hidden in the shadows. The shocking moment of revelation was only the beginning, and neither of them knew where it would lead. As the days leading up to the hearing passed, the tension between Ethan and Clara grew unbearable. They both went through the motions of everyday life, talking to Lily, keeping up with work, maintaining the appearance of a family, but beneath the surface, everything was fraying. Ethan spent his nights lying awake, replaying every decision he'd ever made, every step he'd taken in his life, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. He couldn't fathom what had been uncovered, and yet, as the hearing approached, the realization began to dawn on him. The truth was going to come out, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Clara, on the other hand, was fighting a different battle. The hope she had clung to, the hope that Ethan had truly changed, that their love had been rebuilt, began to slip through her fingers. She had seen the doubt in his eyes, and more than anything, she feared that the man she had tried so hard to trust again might not be the person she had thought him to be. The betrayal wasn't just about the money, it was about the foundation of their relationship. Could she ever truly trust him again? The hearing day finally arrived. Ethan and Clara sat side by side in the cold, sterile courtroom, their hands not touching, the space between them growing wider with each passing moment. The air was thick with unspoken words, but neither of them could break the silence. The judge called the session to order, and the lawyer presented the evidence: transactions, bank statements, hidden assets, or things Ethan had never known about, or, if he was honest with himself, had buried deep in his subconscious. As the documents were shown, Clara's gaze remained fixed forward, her face a mask of stoic resolve, but Ethan saw the look in her eyes. It wasn't just disappointment anymore, it was the raw ache of betrayal. Clara spoke first. She didn't raise her voice, but her words cut through the room. I don't know how to feel anymore. The man I thought I knew, the man I rebuilt my life with, is now someone I don't recognize. How am I supposed to trust you, Ethan? How do I rebuild again, when the foundation we built was never real? Ethan's heart shattered as the weight of her words landed. She had given him everything: her heart, her trust, her love, and now he had shattered it in the cruelest way possible. He couldn't defend himself, how could he? The evidence spoke for itself. Every word he wanted to say felt hollow, an attempt to justify something that was beyond justification. He had failed her, he had failed them both. He stood up, the anger and the guilt threatening to consume him. I never wanted any of this to happen. I didn't hide anything from you intentionally, but I've done so much damage. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. But Clara couldn't look at him anymore. She turned her head, as if the sight of him was too much to bear. The finality in her eyes, the utter devastation, was something Ethan had never seen before, and in that moment, he knew. He knew that the damage was irreversible. The judge ruled in Clara's favor, and as the session ended, Ethan was left with nothing but the haunting echo of his own failure. There were no more questions, no more chances for redemption. The financial settlement was revisited, and Clara was awarded a large sum, enough to secure her future and Lily's. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the broken trust, the irreparable bond between them that no amount of money could ever fix. That as they left the courtroom, Clara walked ahead, not looking back. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, as if unable to move, his feet rooted to the ground. His mind was a haze of disbelief and regret, but deep down, he understood. He had lost her. He had lost everything. Days later, Ethan found himself in their old home, standing in the empty living room. The walls that had once echoed with laughter, with love, with dreams, now felt like tombstones, marking the death of a family, a future, and a love that could never be revived. Clara had moved out, with Lily, leaving the house to him. It was empty, the silence deafening. He sat on the couch where they had once shared quiet evenings, and for the first time in his life, he truly felt the weight of his loneliness. The call from his lawyer came a week later, confirming the finalization of the settlement. Clara had taken Lily and left, starting a new life without him. The only words Ethan could muster when he heard the news were a choked whisper, "I'm sorry." And so, the story ended not with reconciliation or redemption, but with a painful, irreversible fracture. Ethan had once believed that love, when it was real, could overcome anything, but in the end, he learned that some things once broken can never be fixed, and some wounds are too deep to heal. The love they had once shared, the dreams they had built, were nothing more than echoes of the past, fading into nothingness. That Ethan was left alone in the empty house, the silence pressing in on him. The woman he had loved, the family he had built, had all slipped through his fingers like sand, and all that remained were the haunting echoes of what could have been.